Hello and welcome to the last maths lesson of this half term. How quickly has that gone? Cannot believe that it's the end of summer one already. So today we are going to finish off our percentages, fractions and decimals work with a problem solving percentages lesson. This one is in the Power Maths book that you have got at home, so you will be able to do it in the workbook and then send me the answers. So our Discover problem today is this. Here we are at some kind of electrical store. We've got computers, laptops, screens, all sorts. So there is a 1-day sale and we've got Amal and we've got Jem. So Amal is saying that he paid £330 for his television after the discount, and his discount was what? 25%. Jen is saying that the full price of the computer is £450. And what's her discount? 20% off. So the first question is, how much does Jen pay for her computer? So this is a nice, straightforward question. What we need to do is we need to work out a percentage of an amount. We need to work out 20% of the full price, and then we need to subtract it because it's a discount to see how much she pays afterwards. Then we've got question B, which is a little bit trickier, but we've been doing these missing value questions all week, so we should be able to give this a good go. Amal's question was, what is the full price of his television? So he paid £330 for the television after the discount. So if we know there was 25% off, what percentage has Amal actually paid? If it was 25% off, what percentage has he actually paid? What percentage is equal to £330? So draw a bar model and have a go. Okay, so for the number one, for the first one, we need to find out how much Jen paid for her computer. So we need to find out 20% of £450. So straight away, I've written down the sides, 100%, 50%, 25%, 10% and 1%, because I can work those out really, really quickly. So 100% of 450, oh dear, my pen's run out, is going to be 450. Now, remember, you don't have to work out all of these percentages. You just need to work out the ones that are going to be useful. So how could I make 20% using these? Well, I could do 1% and I could times it by 20. I could actually work out 100% and then divide it by 5 to get 20%. I could do 10% times by 2. There's loads of ways you can do it. For me, I'm going to do 10% add 10% because that would get me 20%. So to work out 10%, what do I do to get from 100 to 10%? I divide by 10 because 10% is the same as a tenth. 450 divided by 10 is 45. So if 10% is £45, 10% is 45, add another 10%, which is 45. So that equals £90. So is that the end of my question? Is that how much money she spent? Did she spend £90? Well, be careful. No, she didn't. That is just the discount. She gets 20% off, so she gets 90% off the total price. So what we need to do now is we need to go back to that £450 it should be, take away the £90, which is the sale price. This is the discount, and we should end up with £360. Okay. For part B, we needed to work out what the full price of Amal's television was. He said that he gets 25% off. So if he had 25% discount, that tells me he must have paid 75%. So what I've done is I've split my bar into quarters, into 25%. So there's 25, 50, 75, 100%. And I know that this 75% here is worth £330 because this is what he actually paid and this was the discount. So let's work out what one part would be. Well, 75% is 3 parts, and those 3 parts equals £330. So divide them both by 3, and each part is worth £110, which tells me that the discount was also £110. So the total price to begin with was £110 times by 4, which would be £440. Very well done if you got that right. Okay, think together. We're going to go for this question. So, the table shows the number of customers in the shop on the day of the sale. Find the missing information. So, have a go at working out the percentage of children first. That should be pretty easy. And then if you know what the percentage of children is and you know what that number equals, can you then work out 10% and work out the number of adults that were in the store? Okay. Answer time. So, if you know that 60% were adults, what percentage is children? Well, it would be 40 because they've got to add up to 100. So I've drawn my little bar model. I've cut it into, each part is 10%. So I've got 10 parts. Here's my 60% that is adults. And here is my 40% representing children. And I know that this 40% is 700. So 40% of the whole is 700 people. Now, I need to try and work out what 10% is, what each of these parts is equal. So if 4 parts equals 700, I'm going to do 700 with a better pen because that one's completely broken. I've been doing so much maths today, I'm running out of pens. So I'm going to do 700 divided by 4 because if I do 700 divided by 4, I'll find out what one of these parts is equal. 7 divided by 4 is 1 with 3 left over. 30 divided by 4, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28 would be 7, 2 left over. 20 divided by 4 is 5. So this tells me that each one of these parts is worth 175 people. So, to then work out how many adults there were, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts because each one's 10% and 60% was adults. So I need to do 175 and I need to times it by 6. So 5 times 6 is 30. 6 times 7 is 42. Add 3 is 45. 6 times 1 is 6. Add 4 is 10. So there would have been 1,050 adults. Okay. Question 3 is this. Which grid matches this description? 25% dotted blue, 40% striped green, and 10% solid red. So have a look at A, B, and C. Which one of those matches that description? And once you've done that, part B is what percentage of the grid you identified is white? So whichever one you choose for answer A, what's the percentage of white? Okay, pause the video and have a go. So, answer time. If I look at A has got 20 rectangles. It's split into 20 parts. So my denominator would be 20 and 5 of those are blue. So 5 out of 20 are blue. If I simplify that fraction, 5/20 is the same as 1/4 and 1/4 is the same as 25%. Oh, so it could be grid A. Let's have a look at the green. So the green is 6 out of 20. So if I multiplied that up to 100, if I times them both by 5, that would be 30 out of 100, which would be 30% green. Oh, that one's not right then because it should be 40% green. So if I have a look at B has got 40 rectangles, so my denominator is going to be 40. If I look at the blue, there are 10, so 10 out of 40. So if I simplify that, that would simplify down to 1/4, and 1/4 is the same as 25%. So that works so far. For the green, there's 16 out of 40. So if I simplified that, that would get me 4/10. 4/10 would be the same as 40/100, which would be 40% green. So far, so good. Let's check the red though. So the red would be 4 out of 40, which I would simplify to 1/10 or 1 out of 10. 1 out of 10 is the same as 1/10 or 10%, so that is also right. So far I'm pretty sure it's B. I'm just going to check with C. If I look at C, C is out of 30. C's got 30 rectangles, its denominator is 30. So if I count the blue, there are 9. So there are 9 out of 30 rectangles are blue. If I simplified that to get it into tenths, that would be 3/10. And then I would multiply that to get hundredths, which would be 30/100, which is 30%. So it's definitely not grid C. So my answer would be grid B. So to work out what percentage of the grid B was white, I would count the white squares, which there were 10. So there was 10 out of 40, and I've already worked out for the blue, which means it would be 25%. Okay, now have a go at your workbook. So it is page 88, problem solving percentages. If you want the PDF versions and you've not got your workbook at home, if you go onto Class Dojo or Google Classroom, and they are on there for you as well. So have a go, pause the video, and then we'll go through the answers. Good luck. Right, answer time then. Some of that was pretty tricky. So if you've done all of that, I am really, really impressed. Right, let's go through them. First one was a nice, easy one. It was just asking you to find 15% and then take it away. So again, I've got my little helpful percentages down the side. So I worked out 10%, which was 28. Easy, quick trick for you as well. If you want to work out 5%, just divide 10% by 2 and you can get 5%. So to work out 15%, I then did 10%, add my 5%, so 28, add 14, which is £42. So that was the discount. That's what was coming off the price. So then you've got to do the total, take away £42, which would have left you with 238. Second one. As you can see, I made a very silly calculation error here, so hopefully you didn't make the same mistake that I did. So I drew a bar model, but actually you didn't need to for this one, but if you wanted to, you can, because it helps you visualise. So if 30% cycle and 25% come by car, altogether that's 55%. So the remaining bit is 45%, not 65, which for some reason I wrote down first of all. So 45%. So I need to work out 45% of 120. So to do this, I worked out 50%. I worked out 5%, which you can either divide 50% by 5, or you can divide 10% by 2 to work out 5%, or divide 100% by 20. Either of any of those would work. So to do 45%, I did 50%, take away 5%. 50% was 60, take away 5%, which was 6, and my answer should be 54. Right, this next one, I think this was actually harder than the challenge. I thought this was a horrible question. So this time I did draw a bar model. So I know that the whole thing is worth 240 flights. Okay, the whole thing is 240 flights. I know that 30% here is the percentage of total flights from other French cities. So what I did first of all was I just worked out, well, what is 30% of 240? That's nice and straightforward. And then I know how many flights came from other French cities. Well, 10% of 240 is 24. And 30% then just times it by 3 is 72. So I know that 72 goes here. Now, with the remaining parts, you might have done this a completely different way. However, this is the way that I work this out. And I'm not saying this is necessarily the best way to do it, but it's the way that I did it. So I wrote down here my kind of little helpful facts percentage-wise. So if I know the total, the 100% is 240, I know 50%, I know 25%, I know 10%, I know 5%, and I know 1%. And then I knew that I had to try and make 132 and work out what percentage that was. So I kind of did it backwards. I looked at the numbers and thought, well, how can I make 132 flights? Well, it's got to be 120, which is 50%, and I need to add on 12, which is 5%. You can see I've worked out here, look. So 50% add 5% is 55%, and 120 add 12 is 132. So these two here must be equivalent. 132 flights must be 55%. So I can write that in up here. To work out this bottom row, all I did was I added the top two up, and then I took that away from 240 to work out what must be left. And with 36, what I could have done is I could have come down here again and said, right, well, it could be 10%, add 5%, because 24 add 12 is 36, so it would be 15%. Or you could have added the first two up and taken them away from 100, because these three have got to add up to 100, remember, to make 100%. Very impressed if you got those right. Right, next one here. Ignore my slightly terrible bar model. So, we know that 1,800 children visited a museum, and this was 40%, of the total visitors, when it was 40%. So I've drawn a bar model that shows 10 bars, with which each one is worth 10. And these 4 bars here are worth 1,800. So to find out what 10% is, or 1 bar is, I'm going to do 1,800 divided by 4, which is 450. So 10% is 450. So to work at 100%, I need to times it all by 10, 4,500. Well done if you got that right. Okay then, last one. So for this one, you've got like a balancing scales. So 35% of 180 is the same as 30% of something. And we need to work out what this something is. So first things first, let's work out what 35% of 180 is. So I worked out 100%. I divided by 10 to get 10%. Then I divided that by 2 to get 5%. To work out 35%, I did 10%, add 10%, add 10%, add 5%, which is 18, add 18, add 18, add 9, which would be 63. So I know the answer to this part here is 63. And I need to make this part also equal 63. So 30% of something is 63. So over here, I've drawn my bar model with its 10 parts, and these 3 parts here, this 30% here, is worth 63. So if 3 parts are 63, or 30% is 63, if I divide it all by 3, 10% is 21. And then if each part is 10% is 21, times it all by 10 to find 100%, which was 210. Very well done if you've done all of that. Right, have a go at your reflect, and I will see you, well, not next week, because next week's half term. I will see you the week after that. See you later.